Hello, guys, and welcome back to a first episode in a new series of fantastic podcasts with myself, Richard Smith, and my very, very good friend, Mr. Alan Reeves. Alan, welcome back. I'm on board, man.
Hello, mate. How you been?
Very well, very well. You looking well?
Yeah, thank you, mate. Thank you. A little bit older since I last saw you, but not much because I saw you at my Ultimate Men's Health Retreat in Marbella, where you were speaking for me for 4 days. Absolutely fantastic. And the guys since that retreat, as you've probably seen some of them on Instagram, have just been implementing everything they learned, everything that we taught them, and just looking fantastic. Like Alex, for example, is now like 9% body fat, stronger than ever, feeling better than ever. And now he just got his blood work back because he had his blood test done like 5-6 months ago. Being on this way of life pretty much since he met me in April. And every single blood marker came back in a positive way. He's never felt healthier, looked healthier, or been more shredded. So, yeah, thanks for coming and helping me out there, bro.
Thanks for the invitation. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. It doesn't take much to get me to talk, does it? But
especially when there's sunshine involved. I'm sort of missing that. It's the end of summer now, as you know, and you get that sort of winter blues feeling come. So maybe we have to pull out the stops and get another one done in some sunny climate.
Definitely. Definitely. Book me in. Book me in.
Well, I've booked Miami. I'm off to Miami to go to the Keto conference up there and to meet all my American clients. I have a big bunch now in Florida. And yeah, we're going to have a meet up there and maybe run a next retreat in Miami or somewhere around that coastline.
You can definitely count me in for that one.
Yeah, sounds good. Booked you in. But yeah, it's great to be back. And something we're going to do this every single week, get an episode under the belt and just educate people that this way of life is the best way. It's the healthiest way, in my opinion, and many clients now. And how we do it, how we start somebody off on the ketogenic diet. Do you just go zero carb? Do you go carnivore? What do you remove? Because there's a minefield of information now, and there's almost too much information. You can find an answer for any question that you've got, and they're all different answers. So we can give our opinion for what it's worth.
100%, 100%. Look, so if we start from the basics, Al, what is a ketogenic lifestyle or ketogenic diet essentially? What does that entail? What does it mean?
Well, I only texted that to somebody today that messaged me from Thailand, a guy I know. And they said, oh, is that keto, though? Because it was a low-fat version. I said, well, keto is not technically a diet. It's a metabolic state. So anything that makes you produce ketones is technically ketogenic. So, for example, if you just simply don't eat for long enough, you'll produce ketones. Well, are you on a ketogenic diet? No, you're just in a ketogenic state. So I don't say that there's a ketogenic diet. It's just generally it's the absence of carbohydrates that allows you to produce ketones and then run on ketones because, of course, if you don't have glucose, if you didn't have ketones, you would essentially die, go into a coma and die. And, of course, we don't. We've both been zero carb for many years when we started, or maybe you still are, and none of us are dead yet.
Yeah, 100%. Still zero carb. But you're right. There are many different variations, aren't there, of a ketogenic diet. And as you say, for me, fundamentally, it's being in a ketogenic state and producing ketones, which, contrary to popular belief, are incredibly beneficial. They're not the demon that they've been made out to be. And some people will say that it's a high-fat diet. But you can do keto, as you say, on low fat, and we know that it's not really a high fat diet per se, because if we were to not eat, then we become ketogenic. So that becomes environmental, doesn't it? But there are certain levers that we can pull in order to allow us to become ketogenic. And you mentioned carbohydrates, and the reason for this, for the viewers' sake, obviously, Al, you know all of this. Carbohydrates elicit an insulin response. All carbs break down into sugar. All carbs are sugar. Glucose, essentially, when it's in the body, isn't it? And when that glucose is in the body, the pancreas releases a hormone called insulin. And insulin is there to drive that glucose into the cells, essentially to pull it out of your blood to save your life, because incredibly elevated or prolonged elevated levels of glucose in the blood is toxic. So insulin's job, or one of insulin's jobs, is to pull that glucose from the blood and put it into the cell. But it's insulin that is the key. That is the key mediator, isn't it? That's the lever that we pull. We need insulin to be suppressed in order to produce ketones. And obviously, from a macronutrient perspective, the carbohydrates are the glucose. This is what elicits the biggest response. So that's where we tend to. That's where most people tend to focus. But
it all depends how metabolically damaged you are when you come to a coach like me, of what diet you start on, how many carbs you start on. For example, if you're 25, you may not be that most likely metabolically damaged. But if you're 45, obese, and you've got all these other autoimmune diseases, then it's a very different starting path. So, you may have to be zero carb for many years, or certainly less than 50 grams for many years, rather than doing the other versions of cyclical or targeted. So it quite depends. But one thing I do know, that insulin resistance is the number one driver of all these modern diseases. And I've seen many clients that have got normal blood sugar for many years, but then when they test their insulin, because they don't normally do that, some blood panels are starting to test it now, their insulin's super high. Well, of course their blood sugar will be low until their insulin stops working, or the receptors stop accepting the insulin. Then they get the chronically high blood sugar, then they're diabetic. So from one day they're normal to the doctor, the next day they're diabetic. But it's really taken, could be 2 years, could be 10 years of damage. Then it's a start of the end, if you like, in a doctor's terms, because it's progressive, and essentially you die from one of these diseases.
Yeah, which is, you've made an interesting point there, isn't it? Because the doctor will test blood glucose and not insulin. So as you say, behind the scenes, insulin is becoming elevated. The pancreas is releasing more and more to drive that glucose down, isn't it? So the glucose in the blood is being measured. That is still low, but behind the scenes, the insulin is sort of doing this. So it's a shame that more doctors don't test for insulin. So, for many people that I work with, as you say, I think 95+% of the population are probably in an insulin resistant state, and they don't even know it.
I know I was, because one way you can know for a fact, if I ate carbs, I was super tired afterwards. 30 minutes later, literally exhausted, yawning after 5 coffees, after my oats and stuff and orange juice for breakfast, literally falling asleep. But now, as you know, I do a cyclical version. I do a day or so of carbs, or a meal or two of carbs, but they do the job now. So I'm very insulin sensitive. So actually they do what they used to do when I was a kid, if you like, but they certainly didn't do it when I was 40. I was exhausted all the time. And that's when I thought I need to look into this. And of course, you don't often find your way until you've got these problems or symptoms, as yourself. You had the migraines, the eczema. You knew what you was eating couldn't have been doing you any good, because you was falling apart at 25.
Yeah, 100%. And it's, but the interesting thing with this is, I'm sort of glad that it happened, because it took that damage and that suffering in order for me to start this journey. And for me, it's been life-changing. For those who are new to the channel, I was once clinically obese, type 2 diabetic, suffered with chronic fatigue, depression, anxiety, arthritic pains, daily debilitating migraines that would make me blind, for which I was on 3 different medications.
In your
severe
20s?
Skin conditions in my 20s.
Yeah.
At my peak, I weighed 17 and a half stone, and over 50, nearly 60%, it was over 55% of my body fat, of my body weight was fat. So my body fat percentage, over half of what I weighed was fat, essentially, which is
Wow.
scary. So it's changing my diet allowed me to reverse all of those things very quickly. Yet I was still improving and further recovering from this many years in. So even though the biggest results came very quickly, I was still healing and building and repairing my body for many, many years. But it allowed me to go on to compete professionally in bodybuilding. I became British European champion, then went away from that, competed in endurance sports for a while. And as you know, Al, I work with athletes, as you do, but we also work with people from the general public. We work with people with diabetes and with other forms of insulin resistance and those effects of that insulin resistance, isn't it? But one of the things that you just said there, which was really interesting, was that you cycle carb. So someone's first initial impression of a ketogenic lifestyle is severe carb restriction. But the key to this, I think, which you've just touched on there, is that the reality is you don't need to quit everything. You don't have to. Life isn't over when you gravitate in this journey. It doesn't mean that you can never eat, your favorite pizza or whatever it may be. You can still do these things, but there are key levers to pull on there. And I think you and I are both on the same level in regards to the initial levers that we pull. And interestingly, that first lever isn't carbohydrate, is it? The first lever that we recommend to people to pull for general health and well-being anyway, isn't carbohydrate.
No, I always tell them straight away to remove grains and wheat, especially bread, because wheat is not what it was in the 50s when it was nice blowing in the wind and 2 meters tall. It's now this hardened, genetically altered grain that will withstand any weather, covered in glyphosate. And if you look at a loaf of bread, certainly in America, it's got about 30 or 40 ingredients in it. Somebody posted about Wonder Bread, and then, oh, my granddad used to eat that. Well, yeah, it showed you the label in the 50s, had like 3 ingredients or whatever. Now it has like 40. So no wonder that is doing something different to your stomach. And the leaky gut is the cause, in my opinion, of all these, from chronic fatigue to arthritis or to eczema, bad skin, bad gut, IBS, all comes from the gut, the leaky gut. And if you keep punching holes in something and it keeps leaking, you're never going to get well. And of course, a doctor will only give you medication for the symptoms, not the cure. No money in curing anything, as we know. So I think people are waking up to this now and starting to take health into their own hands rather than just taking a medication.
Yeah, 100%. It's interesting you mentioned there, the bread it's no longer what it once was. And, very true. It's treated with glyphosate, which is a herbicide, which interestingly not only damages the gut as well as the gluten within the bread, and we'll get on from this also because there are other contributing factors in there. But the glyphosate blocks a pathway in the body called the shikimate pathway. The shikimate pathway allows us to create our aromatic amino acids, which go on to create our neurotransmitters. And 95% of these neurotransmitters are created in the gut. So just by consuming these compounds, these grains, and other vegetables, but particularly grains, isn't it, that are treated with glyphosate, it hinders and slows the body's ability to make neurotransmitters, which are, essential for healthy mind and body. And having these damaged leads to depression and anxiety and many other things, which we can get into. But the interesting thing that you touch base on there, the gluten and another compound found within the grains called wheat germ agglutinin. These damage the gut lining, don't they? As you say, they bind. So these are what we call carbohydrate binding proteins, and they bind to the epithelial cells, the enterocytes lining the gut. And when they do this, they cause the release of a molecule called zonulin, and zonulin causes a gap to appear in the tight junction. So the junctions are meant to be like this, but what happens is it causes a gap essentially. So undigested proteins can travel into the bloodstream, and essentially that's what autoimmune is. All autoimmune comes from intestinal permeability, and there are a number of contributing factors to intestinal permeability, like alcohol, medication, casein. But the biggest contributing factor in modern day, the biggest contributing factor today, are the grains. The grains, the wheat, germ agglutinin, and the gluten are the biggest contributing factor. And healing the gut is job number one when it comes to improving your health and well-being. So, as you rightly say, the first protocol is removing the grains, isn't it?
I mean, like Thomas DeLauer, he clearly always is talking about, he goes to Italy a lot, and when he has some sourdough bread in Italy, he never gets the bloat, the fatigue that he gets in America when he eats carbohydrate or bread. So again, we know Europe is a lot stricter with ingredients in than America. So there's a lot of things that are legal in Europe, and it's legal in their food. I mean, to me, that just makes no sense. If something's a poison in Europe, it's certainly a poison in America. Hopefully that's going to change now, but I mean, it really is common sense, isn't it? It makes no sense. And it's just teaching people to actually read labels. My first protocol to a client is to not buy anything with a label, literally whole organic single ingredient foods. And even if we're going low carb for the first couple of weeks, then, it's a sweet potato, it's white rice, it's a white potato, not a ready-made mashed potato powder, which some people still consume. I know when I was a kid, it was them little robots, some spacemen, what were they called?
That's it.
Get mashed, get smash. Get mashed, get smash. That was a common food in our house. That was... it was the 70s, of course, because I'm old. And that's not even food, but people still looking for that ready meal, quick fix. If it's not fast food, they want to make it quick at home. And with all ketogenic meals, especially if it's red meat, you can literally prepare something in 5 to 15 minutes. Job done. And with all the food delivery of Tesco's or whatever, you can always have ingredients at home. So I don't see why you cannot do this. And you can do it at any price point as well. You can do it from your cheapest mincemeat to your finest Wagyu beef. So it really covers any price point. It's no more expensive than any other diet. But certainly my clients feel better within the first week. And one guy I just took on is HRV, and he's got a Whoop. They all have Whoop in America. And his recovery has gone from 20%, it was like, to 70% the first week. And he's actually trained a bit more this week, but he's removed the grains and the seed oils.
Which we'll get onto now, yeah.
Yeah, interestingly, his recovery feels better. He just sleeping an hour less as well, he said, but his recovery is higher. And I've noticed that the last 10 years that I sleep less, but I feel better. I wouldn't 100%. Say I sleep 4 hours. If I sleep 4 hours, then of course you feel bad. But I used to have to sleep 8, but I'd still wake up tired.
Yeah. Now that's interesting. I'm generally 6, I think. I can do well on 5 to 6.
I'm 6 on average. Anything less than 6, it can be a bit of a struggle if it's 3 or 4 days. But if I get 7, I'm Superman. It's literally, I'm 18 again. So, of course, I do everything I can to prepare my sleep. And we've got all these other biohacking tools and supplements and eye masks and temperature. But we can come to that as well. But yes, seed oils, that's my pet hate. That's my big thing. I'm probably even more against seed oils than I am even bread, to be honest, because I think we've been lied to for the last 100 years. I've watched on YouTube how they make seed oil, and it's like a nuclear power station. It's just rotten. And then they're bleaching it with hexane. And I've had colleagues, fitness professionals saying, well, no, it's heart healthy. They are healthy. Who says they're heart healthy? Because we're told that they are, because a bigger influencer says they are. And, you know, what's your take on seed oils? Let's have a bit of science behind it.
Brilliant. So before we get into the seed oils, I just wanted to wrap up quickly about the grains. So, you know, the first piece of advice that we're telling clients currently who are new to this is to remove the grains. So we've established that it causes this intestinal permeability, but grains are also high in carb. So by default, you're reducing the amount of carbohydrate that you're consuming. But also, what's interesting with the lectins, these carbohydrate binding proteins that are found within the grains, the breads, the cakes, the biscuits, they will bind to the insulin receptor and potentially cause 5 times more fat storage than the action of insulin itself without the lectins. So basically, this means that the whole caloric model is now thrown out of the water, because if you were to consume a bowl of muesli that contained 500 calories, or bacon and eggs cooked in butter that contained 500 calories, you are more likely to store more body fat from the muesli than you would from the bacon and eggs. And that's to do with the elicitation and action of insulin, which is the key driver to fat storage. So if you're coming into this way of living for weight loss, and for health and well-being in general, we need to get the insulin down, and lectins will bind and cause that 5 times higher response. And interestingly, you can't store fat without insulin. Insulin is required, and the second that we consume the carbohydrate, which breaks down into glucose, insulin's released. And what insulin does is it breaks the bonds on the glycerol backbone. So within our blood, we have triglycerides, which is essentially three fatty acids connected to a glycerol backbone. So that's what a triglyceride is. That this travels through the body and is very important. But when insulin is elevated, it breaks the bonds and it frees them up so they can diffuse into the fat cell easier. So this is how we store fat, and then they join back together. So the triglycerides, the 3 fatty acids, will join back to the glycerol backbone, and this is how we store fat. And insulin elicits this response, which comes from the carbohydrate that we've just consumed. Now, interestingly, to burn that fat, or to, in fact, I mean, burn is the wrong choice of terms. Barkay would eat me for breakfast if he heard me say that. We don't burn fat, do we? We oxidize fat. But if we wanted, as far as everybody understands, if we wanted to lose that body fat, we need insulin to be low, because we need another enzyme called lipoprotein lipase to break the bonds on the glycerol backbone to allow the fatty acids to diffuse back into the bloodstream. So the 2 enzymes, lipoprotein lipase, hormone sensitive lipase, one will signal the fat storage, the other one will allow us to release those fatty acids again. And insulin directly inhibits that ability. So we can't actually diffuse those fatty acids back into the blood when insulin is elevated. So that's a key part to this. So this stands on it's a multi-level thing, isn't it? So we've got, the grains causing intestinal permeability. We've got grains being high in carbohydrate. We've got the grains causing more fat storage because of that action and elicitation of the lectins binding to insulin receptors. And also, as a final kick in the teeth, these lectins block leptin. Lectins block leptin. Leptin is a satiety hormone. It basically tells us that when we've eaten, that we're full and we're satiated. Well, these lectins block this pathway, so we can eat that bowl of muesli with our chopped up banana and berries, and then 10 minutes later we're hungry again. Or we can eat a pizza.
The signal, because leptin comes from the fat cells, right? It's released from the fat cells, so that's blocking that. So nothing tells you you're full, so you can keep eating. That's what you're.
100%.
Yeah,
100%. Yeah.
And when you are dieting in a deficit, your leptin goes down quite quickly.
Yeah.
So people are always, they never get full. So that's another reason why I do the carb cycling, but we can come on to that because that stimulates leptin more. But that's another further topic. So the seed oils, though, what is happening to that seed oil if you consume the seed oil, especially with carbohydrate? So what happens at the cell when it's trying to fight to get in with the Randall cycle, if it's a seed oil?
Yeah, look, fantastic, brilliant questions. So look, let's look at what first and foremost, seed oils or vegetable oils, things like sunflower oil, canola oil, safflower oil, rapeseed, grapeseed. They don't come from vegetables because something that comes from vegetables sounds healthy, right? It's a vegetable oil. It must be good for us.
Must be good, yeah.
They don't come from vegetables, they come from seeds. And in order to extract an oil from a seed, well, try it yourself. Buy some seeds and squash and see how much oil comes out. It's not an awful lot. So as you say, what the companies do is they treat it with toxic chemicals like hexane to pull the oil out, and then they bleach it with peroxide, with hair dye, because it comes out this dark grey colour. It's incredibly smelly and nobody would ever use it. So they bleach it with hair dye to give it that golden glow, and that's what makes it look healthy. Now, seed oils weren't originally invented for human consumption. They were created as machine lubricant during the war. So they were created as machine lubricant for ships and tanks and things and so on and so forth. But when the war came to an end, an entire industry that had been created had now come to an end. There was no means to sell this product. So what did they do? Well, did they shut down these factories? Did they quit making the seed oils? No, they basically sold it to the food industry. And now it's in almost every compound in the planet. Now,
Crispex was the first product.
Exactly, spot on. And we can get into this also. But it's if we think of this logically, these seed oils, these vegetable oils, you can run your diesel car on seed oil.
Wow.
Would you cook your food in diesel?
No.
And that's an important question, because
that's a good analogy.
So I certainly wouldn't. Now, we're told that they're heart healthy. Now, we're told that seed oils are heart healthy because they lower our cholesterol. And in there lies the first mistake, because cholesterol is in fact essential for life. It's essential for cell formation, cell communication, nutrient absorption, nutrient transportation, the production of hormones, and it's essential for healing. Lack of cholesterol, choline, saturated fats for prolonged periods of time are one of the main reasons that many of us suffer with ill health later in life. Things like there are cholesterol lowering drugs, which are linked to things like dementia and Parkinson's, because the brain thrives on these fats,
I always say that to my clients. I say, well, with heart disease, statins have been fantastic at lowering cholesterol. They do lower LDL cholesterol, without a doubt, the last 30 years. But since they've lowered cholesterol, heart disease has gone up. So,
it has.
So to me, that's just another common sense thing. So yes, it works to lower LDL, but why would you want to do that?
100%. And we know this. There are studies out there, double-blind randomized controlled trials, which show that higher LDL is actually protective. And there's one study in particular, which is on the BMJ, which covers over 68,000 participants. And it basically looks at the association between high LDL and all-cause mortality. And what the results yielded was an inverse association representing 92% of the participants, which basically means the lower your LDL, the higher your risk of death. And I'm going to say that again. The lower your LDL, the higher your risk of death. And this study has been replicated time and time and time again. There are many of these studies out there. The fact is, the whole notion that cholesterol is any way, shape or form involved with cardiovascular disease is rubbish to the point from a healthy LDL profile. And we can get in, we can have damaged LDL. So essentially, in simple terms, the liver will release LDL particles. LDL will circulate the body, dropping off lipid cargo to heal and repair your body. And I'm going to say this again, LDL drops off lipid cargo to heal and repair your body. That's what LDL does.
Confused. There's not good cholesterol or bad cholesterol. There's only one cholesterol.
That's right.
There's high density lipoproteins and low density proteins. They're not cholesterol. The cholesterol's the boat that's carrying them. So it's not good or bad. It's whether that's oxidized LDL protein or healthy HDL. That's what I always say. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I've talked to Dr. Asim Malhotra about this, who was going to talk at my retreat. So I had to do the cholesterol speech, but he went through it. He had to shoot off to America to see RFK. So I think he perhaps took the biscuit over coming to my retreat, but he sort of endorsed what I was saying about cholesterol, that it's, of course, we look for high HDL and lower triglycerides, which is the circulating fat in the blood. Of course, we're burning that blood. Burning that triglyceride, or using it. We're oxidizing it for energy. Whereas carbohydrate people are just building it up because their liver's full, so it's throwing it into their blood. And as I said, went back to Alex, his HDL went up, his triglycerides went down, and he's eating more butter than he's ever ate in his life. So,
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my take on the cholesterol, as you say. But what's the oxidized LDL then? That's the small sticky particles, right?
100%. So your body, the interesting thing is that, and this may shock many people, you can make cholesterol so let's take it back. Cholesterol comes from if we consume, we can consume cholesterol in the diet, or we can make it from fatty acids. So the fatty acids get broken down through a process called beta oxidation, and they create something called acetyl-CoA. And then acetyl-CoA will enter a pathway called HMG-CoA, and then the mevalonate pathway, and through a series of steps, desmosterol and so on and so forth, we create cholesterol. Okay, so fat's the problem. Well, everybody's missing the trick with this, because acetyl-CoA is also the breakdown product of glucose via glycolysis. So acetyl-CoA, so that the main compound which enters HMG-CoA, we can actually make from sugar also. This is why when we reduce the fat in our diet, your body will increase its own production of cholesterol. So it's not driven solely by what we consume. And in fact, there's not one study which actually shows that dietary fat consumption will increase your cholesterol.
No. Now, is that called de novo lipogenesis?
Yeah, but look, many people will say going keto and carnivore increased my total cholesterol, my LDL. And yes, but that's not entirely true, because coming back to the seed oils, so your original question, when we consume the seed oils, our cholesterol comes down because it looks so close to human cholesterol, your body stops making as much because it thinks it has enough. But it's not the same. It works very differently. Cholesterol is synthesized in UV light to create vitamin D. If we don't have cholesterol, we burn. So the seed oils are what causes us to burn in the sun. If you don't consume the seed oils, you'll find that you'll burn a lot less.
I don't burn at all anymore. I never wear sunscreen anymore. And I do start the tan gradually, of course, the sun exposure. If I went to Dubai and when you're in the middle of winter and then you sat there all day long, yes, you may burn. But I burn 100% less than before. And I used to wear stuff before. Now I don't wear anything. And my skin's never been better. So that's interesting.
Exactly, yeah. Me too. I used to be as white as my shirt. Genuine. And I could not tan. And now I barely see any sun. I do use sunbeds. I think they are beneficial, but I probably use it once a week. If that, to be honest, the average is probably maybe once every 10 days, once every 2 weeks even. But I maintain a nice color all year round. And if I am exposed to sun, I do not burn.
Well, my vitamin D is off the charts now as well on my blood test. It's out the range. And but touch wood, I haven't been sick in 10 years either. I used to get chest infections or bad throat 4 times a year. Always. If I looked at somebody, even if it was on Zoom and they sneezed, I would catch the cold. And now I just don't. So it's obviously improved my immune system. So,
and it does, doesn't it? That's what cholesterol's there for. It's there to fight off viruses and infections and help the immune system. So it's essential for healing and repairing. And it's not the demon that it's made out to be. Now, anybody who is thinking along the lines of seed oils are heart healthy. I'm going to drop a bombshell because I want you to search for a condition called cytosterolemia. Begins with an S, cytosterolemia. This is a genetically inherited condition in which the sufferer cannot detox vegetable oils or seed oils, linoleic acid. And this basically leads to an accumulation within their body, and it leads to early onset cardiovascular disease. Now, if you search for so this to me is proof positive, because what you're saying is, if I consume this compound, it's going to be heart healthy. Yet we've just shown in a person who suffers with a condition who can't detox that seed oil, because it is a toxin, and it increases to past the point, it will increase their rate of cardiovascular disease and heart conditions. So that condition, in my mind, conclusively proves that these vegetable oils and seed oils are damaging to the body. Again, you can cook, you can run your car on this compound and you would not cook in diesel. These are industrial oils that are not meant for human consumption. Right. They damage the liver and they further contribute to insulin resistance. So they damage the liver and they further contribute to insulin resistance. These vegetable oils are very high in an oxidized omega-6 called linoleic acid, which basically drives your omega-6 to omega-3 ratio through the roof. And it massively contributes to inflammation and oxidative stress within the body, which also dysregulates your human cholesterol. So this fake cholesterol not only lowers your cholesterol, but it also dysregulates, oxidizes your own body's personal cholesterol.
So how long does it take to remove the seed oils out of your cells? Because the half-life is like 290 days or something.
So interesting, brilliant question. So it can take over 2 years to remove these seed oils. I've even seen research which suggests in some people it may be as much as 5, but the research is very strong on 2 years. In other words, the vegetable oils you consume today could potentially still be causing damage 2 years down the line. Now, glucose, yes, that's problematic. And this also dysregulates your human cholesterol also, because when we consume carbohydrate, so for those who don't know what carbohydrates are things like bread, pasta, rice, potatoes, so on and so forth. Now, carbohydrates in the body break down into glucose, and glucose basically travels the body in two forms, in a linear form and in a cyclical form. So in a straight line and in a circle, and it moves between the two. When it's in its linear form, it's very reactive. And basically the end of this molecule, of a glucose molecule, contains a carbon double bond oxygen. You don't need to know what that is, but it's highly reactive to other amino acids. So basically it binds to this and it goes through a series of processes called an Amadori reaction, which leads to an Amadori product. And then this Amadori product will bind to proteins that are traveling within your body. This causes and creates something called an advanced glycation end product, an AGE. So in simple terms, the bread that you consume, the muesli you consume, breaks down into sugar. Sugar binds to protein and it becomes glycated, an advanced glycation end product. Now, why is this a problem? Because this advanced glycation end product, this AGE, causes aging at a massive rate. So age leads to aging. Now, this advanced glycation end product will bind to receptors on cells called the RAGE receptor. So it's the receptor of the advanced glycation end product, and it will activate two pathways. It will activate a NOx pathway. NOx basically leads to reactive oxygen species. Reactive oxygen species will damage your cells, will damage your DNA, and it will damage your cholesterol. So that glucose, that carbohydrate that you've consumed, has gone through this series of steps, and now it's dysregulated your healthy cholesterol and made it bad cholesterol. And that's the difference. It's turned your good LDL into bad LDL. Now, as a double kick in the teeth, it will also activate another pathway called NFKB, nuclear factor kappa B. Nuclear factor kappa B, if you Google search this, leads to a whole host of inflammatory cytokines. Inflammation. So now we've caused this glycation, dysregulated cholesterol, damaged our DNA, and we've damaged our cells, and we've caused inflammation. This has all come from glucose. Now, we don't get this from the fats that we consume from animal proteins, but this process of events and similar end results are what we will see from the vegetable oils. So now we are consuming a diet that's very high in glucose, in carbohydrate, and a diet that is high in seed oils, a diet that's high in grains, which is causing this intestinal permeability. This whole thing, it's a perfect storm of ill health. 100%.
Inflammation, and the high insulin also causes high blood pressure. And this is why when you don't ever see plaque buildup in a vein, and it's got exactly the same cholesterol in a vein as in an artery. So why do we see plaque in an artery and not a vein if it's cholesterol? Because when they do a stent and they take a vein and put it into where the artery was, plaque then builds up again, but it never builds up in a vein, because the artery is, I think it's 7 to 10 times the pressure it's under than a vein. So again, with the pressure of these damaged particles coming through the epithelial and the glycocalyx that's on the blood cell for the new artery, it's damaging it all the time because it's under high pressure, and it's these little hard bullets, if you like, that's causing the blood clot. This is causing the plaque build. The plaque's actually there to stop you dying from the blood clot. Like if you get a scab on your hand, it falls off in 5 days and we're healed. If the scab fell off inside your heart, you would have a stroke and die. So the plaque's there to stop it falling off. So it's actually trying to protect you. And this all came from a book from The Clot Thickens by Dr. Malcolm Kendrick, another fantastic cardiologist, of course, another one that's endorsed by Dr. Asim Malhotra. I learned all this just by reading. I'm certainly not no doctor, but I read. And it's very interesting that they was vilified and almost fired because they didn't recommend statins or recommend the traditional diet. So, but we should love to maybe get Dr. Asim on and talk to him about heart health for an episode. But so we're removing the grains, we're removing the seed oil, and already you're going to remove all that inflammation, all this toxicity, all this high blood pressure, all this insulin causing problems. And how long does it take insulin to go down? Because I've noticed them feeling better within days.
Insulin will start to correct itself literally overnight. And we can see this through testing. Insulin levels will begin to drop. And one thing that you touched base on there, Al, is that insulin is the driver of high blood pressure or essential hypertension, because it's an insulin-dependent state. So when we reduce the carbohydrate, insulin drops and it releases sodium from 4 points in the nephrons in the kidneys, and now blood pressure returns back to normal. So if you suffer with high blood pressure or essential hypertension, it's more than likely to do with your high carbohydrate and high seed oil diet.
But when they're eating ultra-processed microwave meals, it has vegetable oil, it has salt, but it also has the sugars. So it's got them all in there, but salt got the blame. The heart healthy fat didn't, and nor did the carbohydrate, because it could be quinoa that they're microwaving. When it's actually not the salt, it's the other two. I eat salt before a workout. I eat a spoon of salt. I drink your electrolytes all day long. I've got some here, and my blood pressure. I had a high blood pressure before I started this when I was about 35. They gave me beta blockers. I don't even think they didn't follow up on that. I just never took one ever. I just Googled the side effects, and PPIs they gave me as well, which was the protein pump inhibitor for my acid reflux. I didn't even take one of them either. That's when I became my own doctor, if you like. A bit like Dana White, as he said. He became his own doctor. He would never go to a doctor, he said, unless he broke his arm or needed surgery. but certainly not for health and nutrition advice. But interesting. I could talk about this all day long, but then we've got school runs to do. I know.
100%. Look, Al, I think we've nailed this for episode number 1. So anybody looking to gravitate into a healthier way of living without adding any, terms or titles, just removing the grains and seed oils is going to see you improve your health and well-being. And we're not even talking about becoming ketogenic. We're not even talking at becoming low carb even at this point. So just by doing those 2 things, anybody can implement them and see massive results very, very quickly. So I think, my advice for the viewers, Al, is stay tuned for the next episode where we'll gravitate a little deeper and we'll talk a little bit more.
What is a ketone? What is beta hydroxybutyrate and the other 2? How do we test for it? And do we need to test for it? And, all those things, because it's super interesting.
Fantastic stuff. Al, my friend, always a pleasure. Great to see you. Thanks again.
Good to be back, bro. Good to be back.
100%. Already looking forward to the next one.
Wicked, man. Thank you.
Take care, man. See you soon.
Mate.